Hello, in this presentation we will compare QuickBooks Online versus QuickBooks Desktop. Hello, in this presentation we will take a look at the general formatting options for a balance sheet within QuickBooks Online. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here we are in the QuickBooks Online dashboard. We will be continuing with the Get Great Guitars problem. We're going to take a look at the balance sheet once again, this time focusing in on those options for formatting. In order to do that, we're going to go back to the reports on the left side. And if we're in frequently run reports, which will be the default most times, we would see the balance sheet pretty soon because the balance sheet is a report that we will probably be running most frequently. If it's not there, we can type it up here and put in the balance sheet and it will then auto-populate. We will select the balance sheet. We're going to change that date range once again from 01/01/21 to 02/28/21. That's January 1st, 2021 to February 28th, 2021. It's not going to work until we run that report. Now note once again that we're going to be working in a problem in the future. If we haven't yet put any data into the system, that's okay. We'll just go over the end component. This is what's going to be there at the end of our process. And then we'll come back and we'll be able to run these reports again. And we'll see that information populate. So we're really seeing what's going to happen after we enter the data. Then we'll enter the data. Then we'll run these reports again. All the formatting options will be very similar for all these reports. Note we have a date range for the balance sheet, even though the balance sheet is as of a point in time. That is typically going to be so that we can select this item and drill down on this information for a transaction report. And it also affects the different type of customization options we will have for the report. Now, if we want to select and change some of the formatting of this report, then one place we can go, the main place we can go, is to the customize option up here. Note we have some customizing that will be mostly in the general area, as we will see in this customize, just this outer section as well. So here, of course, we have the customize option here. That's going to be if we want some other date range, then these will be the most common. If we just want the day, this week, this week to date, this month to date. If we select these, it'll give us the current information in accordance with those items and just select that date range. Now, of course, because we are working with a problem that is not standard, we're working in some other date range rather than a current date, then we have to customize every time. So we put in a customized range here, and anytime you just start putting in the dates, it will then auto fill to custom dates on this side. Then we have the display columns. If we select the drop down, we have days, weeks, months, quarters. This will actually, within this report, because it's a balance sheet showing just a point in time, if we select these different items, it'll often change it to so if we select months, for example, then we often will, and we run that report with the months, then it'll often change the 1 month to 2 months. So what it did is we have 2 months selected here. So it's saying, well, you must want the month end then of each of those months. So it took January's month end and February month end. So it took the range of data that we selected here and it broke out in chunks in accordance with the time frames we selected here, in this case those being months. If we select the weeks, then of course it'll do a similar type of activity. If we run that report, we should get it broken out by week. So of course we have a lot more data. We've got each week for the months of January and February, and we can do some comparison. Each of these weeks is as of a point in time, as of the end of each week. So that's what that information is going to do to this particular report. We can do that, of course, years, quarters, and whatnot. We're going to go back to the total and run that report. Then we have the active rows and columns. If we select this item, it's going to say show all rows that are active versus all rows versus non-zero. This is a really useful setting here because if there's any activity within the report, even if it's a zero balance and we say active, it'll show us that activity. So for example, if we scroll through here, we have this zero balance. Typically in the desktop version, that would not appear here, it would just be gone. And the great thing is that when it does appear, is that if there is activity, because it's active over this date range, even though it's zero, we can select that item and we can see the data that's happening. So we can get that transaction report very easily by showing that item. I'm going to scroll back up top and go back to the report. And if we scroll back up, then if we select this item again, if we were to say all, then it's going to pick up the stuff that's active and the stuff that we haven't used at all for that date range. Probably not one we want much because it might have a lot of zeros there, zero accounts that will be involved, zero accounts that have no activity and are no use to us. If we want to remove them, all the zero accounts, which we probably would if we were to give the report to an outside user, we can say we want everything that's non-zero and run that report, and then that should go down and we shouldn't see any more zeros in this column. So that's going to be some useful features. It is nice to have this default to have the actives when you're jumping back and forth from the report so that you can see the detail. Next we have the select period item. If we select this, we'll first take a look at these items down here and then we'll go down to the previous period and previous years. We have the percentage of rows. Because we only have the singular rows here, that's not going to be very interesting, so we'll look at that at a later report. If we take a look at the percentage of columns and run that report, we're going to run that report, percentage of columns, then we'll get our percentage column on the right side. And the percentages can give us a nice measurement when we're comparing to other types of companies that are similar in nature but different in size. For example, if we're talking about a different company that does the same thing we do, we sell guitars, but they're a lot bigger than we are, then we couldn't really compare our cash as related to how much cash they have because the comparison might not be useful. But the comparison of our total cash holdings in relation to the total assets could be something comparable. So in this case, if we were to say that we had our calculator here, we're saying that cash is 98,995.56. What percentage of that is our total? Is it of our total investment? I'm going to scroll back down to the total assets down here. And so we're going to say our total assets divided by 228,389.56. And that's 43.4334. Which if we move the decimal 2 places would be 43.35. And so that's going to be our 43.35. So if we were to compare it to some other company, we could say, yeah, our cash is about 43%, our accounts receivable is about 5%, and see if that's comparable to other companies. So I'm going to unselect that. I'm going to unselect this item, and we'll run that report. That'll take us back here. Now the other items are a little tricky to look at. If you say we want the previous period, what we're saying is we want a comparison to the previous period. In order to do that, we need to select a current period, a current like month in our case, and then select the previous period. So I'm going to change the date range here. I'm going to make this for the month. We'll make it 02/01/21. So it's February 1st, 2021 to February 28th, 2021. So we're going to run that report. So this is as of February, running for February. Same date down here, but now up here we're telling it that it's just for that month of February. And the reason it's the same date down here is because it's a point in time. But now we're really trying to tell QuickBooks to give us 2 time periods as a comparison. And so we want it to just take this current months of data. Then we'll select this and we'll go to the previous period and we will run that report. And it'll give us as of February 28th and then as of January 31st. It gives us the current month first. So we get this comparison of the 2 date periods. And again, The reason it does that is because we're saying as of the end of the second month, and then we said pull into the prior period, the previous period, and that's going to give us January and February. If we continue with this, if we select this drop down again, if we want the change in dollar amount, we select the change in dollar amount and we run that report, then it's going to take the difference between those 2 months and it'll give us what the difference is in dollars. So now we've got the difference between February and January. In terms of the checking account, it's $4,654. In terms of the accounts receivable and so on, we have the change in dollars. We can also get the percentage change. So that's going to give us the change in dollars. If we select this one more time and we select the percentage change and run that report. Let's do that once again. It jumps down there sometimes. Then we're going to get the percentage change. And once again, the change in dollars is really important for us. We can see, okay, that's, you know, a significant dollar change, but we might not be able to compare it to a company of different size, even if it's the same industry. So what we could compare then is the percentage change, and that's calculated as we take the difference. So we took 98,995.56 minus the 94,341.14 or 17 gives us the change, the 4,654.39, and then we're going to divide that by the first period, this number here, this 94,341.17, and that's going to be, if we move the decimal 2 places to the right, a 4.93 increase from January to February. So that gives us our percentage change. That's really useful, again, comparing different companies, companies of different sizes, and especially. So I'm gonna take this back off. I'm gonna unselect that, and many of those types of options that we looked at are in the display option on the desktop version. Then we're gonna go back to this customize field here and see a couple more. Oh, one more thing here. We got the cash versus accrual toggle. Now, this gives us a quick jump between the cash and accrual. It's not perfect, however, because QuickBooks is going to be run not by, theory rules, meaning, when should revenue be recognized? It should be recognized when we earn the revenue. When can QuickBooks recognize revenue? It's going to do it by getting triggered in some way, and that we have to tell it what point are you going to recognize register at or revenue at. And typically, revenue will be recognized when we create an invoice. And that's going to be basically the accrual method for QuickBooks. And if we select the cash method, then it's going to recognize revenue when cash is leaving or going into the company. So it's not a perfect transaction, but it gives us, if we know how QuickBooks is moving between these two items, we can go to these two items and it'll give us a quick change, which is really nice because we can see kind of a cash flow statement versus an accrual statement. Okay, now we're going to look at the customize items. There's a few more items within the general area up top and the customize items. Some of them are going to be the same, including the date range. We saw this over here, so we have this item and the dates. So here's the drop down, the custom dates. If it was the current time period, we can select the current month or the current year, or we can select a custom date range. We have our cash versus accrual toggle. And then we have a couple items we haven't seen before. We've got the divide by 1,000. Why would you want to do that? Because if you're talking about a large numbers, if you're talking about millions or billions, if you're talking about millions or hundreds of thousands, you might want, the ratio will be the same if we lose some zeros. So it might be easier to look at a form by dividing by 1,000. So we can select this and divide by 1,000. If we divide by 1,000, we probably don't want to see pennies. It makes no sense to have cents included if we're looking at the report by thousands. So we'd probably want to select that item too. And then we can also represent the negative numbers. A lot of people like to see negative numbers with brackets. This is kind of unusual to me to see it like that, but brackets is very common for me to see negative numbers that way. We could also show them in red if we so choose to really let them stand out. And so if we select that, we're going to say run that report. then we'll see a lot smaller numbers, and we'll just have to note here, of course, that these numbers are in thousands. And so there we have this items, and the negative numbers are bracketed and in red. So those are some of our items that we can change through the display. We've got a lot of options to really format this balance sheet in some customized ways. Hello, in this presentation we'll be taking a look at the balance sheet display options within QuickBooks Pro 2018. If you've been following along with us, we will be continuing with the Get Great Guitars problem. If not, that's okay. We'll be taking a look at the balance sheet report and the display options. If you have the backup up to this point, you can go to the File tab and restore the backup, which is done in a prior presentation. We currently have the Open Windows tab open. You can open the Open Windows tab or list by going to Views, Open Windows List. Currently have the Home tab open. In order to open the Home tab, we go to the Company dropdown and Home page. We're going to be taking a look at a balance sheet in this presentation and look at the display options within the balance sheet. In order to do that, we'll open a balance sheet by going to the Reports dropdown at the top, scrolling down to Company and Financials, and then scrolling down once again to Balance Sheet Standard. We're going to change the date to the year end we are working on, that being 12/31/21 or December 31st, 2021. This is going to be the standard format of the balance sheet. We're going to take a look at some options we have up here in the Customize Report field. Before we go there, note that we do have this nice little option here that does let us toggle back and forth between an accrual method and a cash method. That option in prior QuickBooks versions was up here in the Customize Report field. As we will see, it is still there, but it's also here. So if we wanted a quick conversion to an accrual versus cash, we can do that. Now, these two conversions, remember that if we're on an accrual version, that means that QuickBooks is doing its best, meaning it's recording revenue when we record an invoice and expenses when we make a bill, rather than when we have a deposit that's going into the bank in terms of revenue or a check going out in the terms of expenses. However, note that just because it says accrual basis here doesn't mean that we're perfectly on an accrual basis. We have to be mindful that it just means that QuickBooks is using its best tools to drive it in the format of an accrual basis using an invoice for revenue recognition rather than cash being received. We still have to make some adjustments to make it on a perfect accrual, but these can be useful toggles to go back and forth between the accrual method and the cash method. We're then going to go up here to the Customize Report up top, and we get this window. Now there's going to be 4 tabs here. We're going to be spending our time with the Display tab and look through the options within the Display tab. The first being the Dates dropdown. Now we have a Dates dropdown up here too, and we have these options over here within the Dates dropdown. So if there's something within this dropdown, we can do it before going into a report, before going into the Customized Reports. So what do we have? We have the custom date down here. That's because I customly put in the 12/31/2021, us working in the future. However, if we were working in the current time, then we could use a lot of these options would make a lot more sense. We'd have today, giving us the data for today, this week to date, this month to date, this quarter. Now, some of you might be saying, hey, this is a balance sheet. It doesn't make any sense for us to have these week to date, month to date. It's only as of a point in time, as of, in this case, December 31st, 2021. But it's good to have the date ranges sometimes on the balance sheets, not because we're going to report it on the balance sheet or show it within the balance sheet report, but if we want to drill down on that data and take a look at what's behind that data, it is useful to have a report that's going to have a range. So these are the standard ranges. We got the fiscal year, we've got the fiscal year to date, yesterday, last week. So these will give us the normal time ranges. And again, if we're working in the current day, in the current time period in time, then all of these normal date ranges would make sense. Of course, we're working a problem that is in the future, and therefore we have to have a custom date range in order to put that custom date. Now when we put this date here in, note we only have one option for the date here, and that's because it is a balance sheet and we only have one option. We have the date range option here, which again might seem unusual to most people that have, studied accounting, and they're going to say, well, I only need one date, and that's what a balance sheet is. But again, when we drill down on this information, it'll be useful to have two dates. For example, if we put 01/01/21, January 1st, 2021 to 12/31/2021, and then we drill down on some of the data looking at the detail, we will get a transaction report similar to a general ledger that will give us that detail there, rather than us having to change the date range when we go to the GL or the transaction report. So that's often very helpful, can save a lot of time. We see this report basis toggle once again, the accrual and basis. This is where this toggle that we looked at before traditionally has been in QuickBooks. They have not removed it, still there, and it's also here too for a bit easier usage. Then we have the display columns by, and we can have the totals or these various options. Now, if we only have one point in time, then the balance sheet will just need a total. But if we choose a range, this would be one reason that we would want to use some other option, and then it could allow QuickBooks to do some other defaults. So before we show that, first let's take a look at this range. I'm gonna cancel what we did before, meaning I only have this one date, and cancel this out. Then if I want to see the detail behind this checking account, QuickBooks has a great zoom feature, so I'm going to zoom in. And it only gives us that one date. It doesn't give us any activity because it only has that one date, and I would have to change the date to 01/01/21 possibly. And that'll give us the information from January 1st, 2021 to 12/31. So if I close this back out then, and we go back to the customized report, and we change this from 01/01/21 to 12/31/21, however, and select OK. Then if I double click on this data, it'll give me the data without having to first change the date range. That's the point of changing those date ranges, so that you can really go in and not have to change this report, this transaction detail report, which is basically the general ledger type report, showing us the activity that backs up and creates the amount within the checking account. So I'm going to close that back out. That's the one big reason to use that range. I'm going to go back into the customized report. Big reason to use this range. Number one reason in my opinion. But it could also be used for us to display, say, multiple months. So if I want this to show not just the year ended, but I'd like to see multiple months on one report, the way to tell QuickBooks to do that is to say, hey, here's a range that we want, but we want you to show multiple months. So in this drop down, we don't want just the total, we want to see by month. So that will tell QuickBooks, okay, we want this year by month. I'm going to say okay, and QuickBooks then gives us the month ended. Now what this means is, as a balance sheet report, it means that we're giving the balance as of the end of each of these month time periods, at each point in time at the end of these months. And so that's how we can give QuickBooks the information, or tell QuickBooks, hey, this is what we would like to see, multiple months on one report. Going back to the customized reports, we can of course do that for different month ranges, so a quarter, a day, a week, whatever we would like to do. So that's a very nice option. If we go back to the total option, we will still have this date range up here, but when we display it, it will only show the as of December 31st for that one time period, and again it'll allow us to drill down, however, and see that detail. We then have these options down here. We have the previous period, the previous year. This is how we're going to tell QuickBooks to say, hey, this is the balance sheet report. What I would like to see is this report year and then the previous time period, because I would most likely I'd want to see a comparison between those. So for example, if I chose a year here, it's going to pick the year before that. If I choose just a month, however, let's say we chose the month of February. So we're going to choose 02/02/21 to 02/28/21. I'm sorry, 02/01/21. So February 1st, 2021 to February 28th, 2021. That's going to be for that month. Then if we go down here and choose the previous period, it should take that month and the previous one, January. So it's going to show the current month and then the previous month of January when we select OK for this report. If we go OK, we've got February 1st and then January on the comparison. If we go back to the customized report, you might be saying, hey, there was a similar option if I had this date range. If I had this date range from January to February 28th and then chose the monthly format, it would show a similar thing in that it would have the 2 months there too, showing each month. What's the difference between this? Well, one point of having this option here is that we can also have the change here. So I want to see this period and the last period this month and the last month, and then tell QuickBooks, give me the difference between the two. Tell me what the difference is. If we select that, then QuickBooks will give us the amount here for the current month, prior month, and the change. So in this case, February 28,995.56 minus the 94,341.17 gives us the change of 4,654.39. That can be useful, of course, if we go back up to the customized report. Then we might also want the percentage change. So this is going to tell us we want the two periods, we want the difference between them, and then we want the percentage change. So if we select that item and OK, then we get this next row here, and that could be useful if we're comparing something like McDonald's to like our burger shop. We have a small burger shop to McDonald's. The dollar change wouldn't be enough for us to see because they're going to make a lot more money. But the percentage change may be something that can give us information. So to calculate that, we take the difference, 4654.39, divided by the previous month, in this case 94341.17, means there's a 0.049. If we multiply that times 100 to make it a percentage, that gives us the 4.9, rounding here to 4.9%. That's meaning that we have a 4.9% increase, and that is something we can compare to people and companies that have different dollar amounts in total revenue, but we can still compare the percentage changes, and that can be very useful. If we go back up to the customized reports here, that's going to be the previous period. We can do the same kind of thing if we just want to go to the previous year. Now, if we would have selected the entire year, that would also work in terms of the previous period. But if we select the previous year here, we can do that with just basically one click rather than multiple clicks. For example, if I had 12/31/21 to 12/31/21, the same year end, and we select previous year, we're going to say OK. And it gives us the December 31st, 2021 and the prior year just with that one date, meaning I could have just put the date in here and then chose the previous year. And if I go back to customize report, it's going to have just that one date, and then I can just choose the previous year and it'll say, okay, I'm going to take the previous year from this year. And we can have the same options of change the dollar amount and change the percentage and say okay, and it'll give those options as well. Going back to customize report, this here, these options of the change there is what we call a horizontal analysis, where we're comparing last year to this year to last year, and look at the increase and decrease and the percentage increase and decrease. If we want to see the vertical analysis, we can see the percentage of columns by selecting this item, and we're going to say OK. And that'll give us the percentage of columns here. So this is going to be a vertical analysis, and it's useful to have this because we can then make a comparison, basically saying, okay, how much of the total assets is the checking account? 98,995.56 divided by the total assets 228,089.56 gives us the 4.3. If we multiply times 100, we get the 43.40. So that's what we're saying here is the cash is 43% of our total assets. Accounts receivable is 4 or 5% about of our total assets. Inventory is 0.6. Prepaid insurance 4.4. This again useful because we can compare this to other companies and say what is their percentage of cash. They might have a lot more or less cash than we do, but what's their comparison between how much cash they have to their total assets? That's often something that could be useful for us to do some comparisons and some benchmarking. If we go back to the Customize report up top, next time we're going to take a look at some other options, including the Filter tab, the Header and Footer tab, and the Fonts tab.